All right, it's time for us to talk some business. This is time for Business Hub on Smooth 98.1 FM. Still on the Smooth Drive with Aya and Shopware. And today we're going to be joined, or we are already joined actually. We have DEVOE with us this wonderful evening. Hi, DEVOE. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ayo. Hi, Shopware. A cool evening time.
Okay.
DEVOE. So you greet the same in the evening as you do in the morning.
I have to write that down. A cool evening time.
Love it. All right. Hi, DEVOE. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Business Hub. DEVOE is a public affairs consultant, and he's going to be talking about the Nigerian SME Outlook for 2023. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be a roller coaster year? Let's find out with DEVOE OKORIE. We are already streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. Join the conversation. Leave your comments up on the live chat up on the live stream. You can also send WhatsApp messages to 0809 440 981. Or you can take things over to Twitter with the hashtag BusinessHub981. All right, so DEVOE, we can't look ahead. Well, at least, the smart people will not look ahead before looking at the past and seeing what came before so that we can now plan for what the future might look like. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that I think that we should talk about is the year that's just gone past, 2022. How would you describe the business environment for SMEs in 2022?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
we can.
Okay, great. Well, I guess sometimes these things are known by all. It's just that we have to now break them down. 2022 for SMEs was harsh. And why I say harsh was because Nigeria itself, on the larger scale, was coming out of multiple headwinds, like a long-time recession, the pandemic, as well as you remember, if just just after the pandemic, we now started facing the Russia-Ukraine war. So literally, SMEs that form the bulk of business within the country didn't have much to work with. I remember clearly how after the pandemic, when CBN refinanced some of the loans to businesses nationwide, and they tried to give it like a single digits just to give them some breather. It didn't take time before they now said, well, time is up. And then we were hit with the Ukraine Russian war crisis, which literally had another domino effect on all of economic indicators. So yes, 2022 was a trying year for a lot of SMEs, especially those that made it, because we must be mindful that as these headwinds hit businesses, a lot of them pack up in the long run.
But for those that stayed behind, some of them had to get leaner and meaner in order to deal with supply chain issues, overhead costs mounting, the cost of diesel went up, a lot happened. So actually, you know what? If you're an SME that made it through 2022 and you're listening and you're the proprietor, good on you. Congratulations. Welcome to the new year, and we're hoping it's going to be better for you.
Yeah, should I add more to that question? Because I didn't know how much time I had, but I wanted to describe a lot of what they faced.
Well, we've got a half an hour to talk everything through, so go ahead.
Okay, so one of the key issues that SMEs face, as usual, the usual challenge is access to finance. And as you know, because of the inflation that rose practically across the whole of 2022, with CBN raising interest rates all the time, it became more difficult for SMEs to actually get loans, despite the fact that there were various interventions and depending on the sector that you were in. Two, the inflation directly came obviously from the rise in diesel prices, which was an effect of the inability of Nigeria, amongst other countries, to get petroleum products as cheap as they used to be. Remember, crude went from about $75 into about 90, and then it hovered above the $100 range for a long time. So what that meant was that instead of us getting it easily, the Balkan region had challenges So immediately there was a spike in the crude price. Everything that comes imported, everything that you require FX for went up. So people were hit in terms of transportation prices, airfares, shipping costs. The one and the big elephant in the room, as always, power. Even if you get to the office, will the lights be on in your office to be able to keep it on? We saw a lot of SMEs. If you were using diesel before, you would have to stop and maybe manage with PMS. That too had its own issue because of the subsidy affair and the various artificial or adulterated fuel plus fuel scarcity. And then the domino effect of the inflation, not just on SMEs, but also the consumers. So when there's high inflation, sustained inflation, many people like you and me, starting from the middle class down to the larger, lower income society, cannot afford what we used to buy. I remember I used to buy, let's call it imported butter in the market for about 1.5. I hit the supermarket and it was about 5,000 naira. So
Really?
you can
So
understand
fine.
how,
Whoa.
yes, you can understand how hard it is for those who had to put on the lights for their businesses. Maybe they were manufacturing or they had a service business and they needed their staff usually to work overtime. In this case, you saw a lot of offices closing early because there was no diesel or no extra fund available to keep the lights on as late as most businesses could. And then you saw a lot of offices maybe taking a lesson from COVID in terms of working from home. And maybe we'll work in the office 3 days in the week, 2 days in the week. Staff will have to work from home. These are some of the challenges that made it very difficult for 2020. Not to talk of the insecurity that drove a lot of offices away from their places of operation.
Wow.
And as I may add, I think this is the last part. SMEs, that's why they call them small and medium scale size businesses. Many of them are just starting up. Many of them are struggling to make a profit, or if they are making a profit, struggling to grow. So they don't usually have the buffers that the larger corporates have to stomach and to absorb a lot of these shocks whenever they come.
All right. I think with the year that 2022 was for small and medium enterprises, we can leave that behind. We're in 2023 now.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I mean, now looking at everything has gone, in the past. It's a new year. It's a time to look to the future. Now, is next month's election, is it a reason for SMEs to actually be fearful or to be hopeful?
Well, the big word there is outlook. What is the economic outlook for SMEs? And in this instance, one of the key highlights for 2023 is the election that's coming up in less than 2 months. So usually what happens with an election year is that there's going to be a change of guard in governance at literally 2 major levels, at the presidential, National Assembly, as well as the states. So what that means is that already foreign investors and even large corporates take a cautionary position in terms of their outlook. So you're not going to get a lot of yes in terms of business deals and all of that until after the election, when businesses can get an idea of who and what is in power and where their directions are going to be. So what that directly has is a direct slowdown in economic activity, which affects the SMEs once again. So what I expect SMEs to do is to try and steady the tide at a time like this, not to take on any venture that is a little bit more than they can chew, so that they can successfully see themselves at least into the half year of 2023 successfully without having to sink. The larger question is, will whoever is going to be voted into the seats of power have the best interest for the economy? So it's a call on SMEs who are actually corporate citizens of Nigeria to participate, to ensure that they make their challenges known to many of the campaigns that are ongoing, to ensure that we get the right person who can actually create the enabling environment for them to prosper.
All right. Speaking about enabling environments, how would you rate the efforts of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council in terms of making life easier for SMEs?
No disrespect to Pebek, but I almost forgot they existed.
Oh,
Wow.
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 I hope Jumoke doesn't hear that.
Enough
But you
said.
see, the thing is, ease of doing business. Nigeria already was struggling. And basically, when we talk about the ease of doing business, it's about how easy an SME, a small, medium scale size business, can go about in the handling of its business and the environment that it operates in. So you talk about registration, you talk about paying of taxes, you talk about get sourcing materials, you talk about the operating environment, you talk about the legal environment in terms of protections when there's a dispute, etc. All these are the factors that people put into the calculation for ease of doing business. And on a global scale, Nigeria used to be at 141 out of 190 countries. That's from the World Bank designation. I think we went up to about 131 in 2021. I think, 2022 we came down to about we came down from 131 to about 135. So generally, we're not in a good place, in as much as the federal government would like to posture it that we went up from where we were before, but we're still at the lower tier of countries globally, and it's not far-fetched to understand why ease of doing business became very difficult in the country, because businesses had to face a lot of these shocks that I just mentioned earlier to survive. Therefore, when they're trying to survive, it's kind of difficult for them to actually give a pat on the back to government in terms of how it has fared in making life easier for itself. I mean, just to give you a simple example, between the businesses and their staff, look at all the government processes and registrations that are required at different points in time, that every time it has to do with government, either at the state level or at the federal government level, you go through literally hell. And that's the lack of a better word: driver's license, NIN, PVCs, passports, registration for your business, CAC checking of whether your documentation has expired, all the various processes that you have to engage government with, even payments of taxes, filing of reports. It's a difficult environment. In as much as we tout technology, government hasn't really been able to integrate technology throughout most of its processes to make life easier for businesses in the long run, so that at the end of the day, that's mutual symbiotic relationship that you require. Nigerians go through a lot. Toll gates, taxation, logistics. Well, you know how we used to say based on logistics, just ordinarily moving Shokwe, what you're wearing, it could have been made in Aba, or let's even say Kano. Or yeah, move it down from Kano to Lagos. And the businessman will tell you the hell that he went through at checkpoints with police, with Navy, bad roads, etc., just to get this cloth that you're wearing down to you in Lagos. So ask me again, the impact or how well the Ease of Business Presidential Committee did. And I'm being mild.
I don't think we're going to ask again. I'm not sure what we'll get next time.
Oh my goodness. All right, DEVOE. I actually want to take you back to school. I won't tell you exactly what I mean by that, because we have to go on a break now. But on the other side, we'll definitely dive into that. Stick around. It's still Business Hub on Smooth 98.1 FM.
Sorry, guys, that was unintentional. I thought I was in silence.
We're still on YouTube.
We're still on YouTube.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
There's no easier way to say this. Slow internet is bad for business. So if you want what's best, get the Airtel Smartbox Outdoor Unit for SMEs.
Shops,
business at internet speed of up to 200
Yes.
megabytes per second with the
How are you
Airtel
enjoying the afternoon or the evening?
I'm loving it.
instant access to other
Look at you. You sound so relaxed. Can you imagine?
or send an email to
It's a very relaxing show. It's filled with
Yeah.
fun, good music.
That's a taboo.
What's a
Yeah.
taboo? Loving your show?
That you should be so
Right back.
relaxed.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. It's still Business Hub on the Smooth Drive on Smooth 98.1 FM. All right, we still have DEVOE with us, and we've been talking about the outlook for SMEs in Nigeria in the year
Yes.
2023.
And before we went on a break, Aya was dropping us off the edge of a cliff. So the
Yes, I was.
cliffhanger, the break is back.
Yes, I
That's
mentioned
good.
I was taking DEVOE back to school. And what I mean by that is, DEVOE, we have a multiple choice question for you. Now, what is the biggest hurdle facing SMEs in 2023? A, insecurity. B, multiple taxation. C, insufficient power supply. D, poorer customers. Or E, all of the above. Taking you back to when you had to shade.
Play the musical. Ding dong dong dong. Ding ding dong. Ding ding dong 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 dong. The truth is, I mean, honestly, it's I off the top of the head, it's all of the above. Because in Nigeria, it would have been nice to say that, okay, in Q1 we faced insecurity. Q2 we then battled inflation. In Q3 we then had to deal with the poor consumer capacity. But in Nigeria, we literally are hit on all sides from every angle at the same time.
Hmm.
That's the reality. And that's why they say this is a hostile business environment. And most times, people don't realize this unless you are an employer. If you're an employer and you're fixed with dealing with all of this, and then end of month, without being reminded, you have to pay salary, you will realize how difficult it is to stay faithful month on month, on month. And that's like a small memo to people who their companies have been able to pay them without
Any
gap
delays
or lapse or delays for the whole of 2022. I mean, yes, it's what they should do, but if your employer has been able to do that as and when due, as they say in finance, please be grateful, because they have survived a lot just to keep at that point. And that's the reality. So I say all of the above.
Wow. All right, now, DEVOE, you know we can't just leave it at all of the above. Let's go into the follow-up questions. So I feel like we need to talk about solutions. It was getting very doom and gloom for a second. So let's focus on the solutions, which I know is your forte, DEVOE. You love to focus on solutions. The first thing I'll bring up is the issue of insecurity. So is that something that actually we can have SMEs having a hand in, or is it completely out of their hands? For example, if they were to increase their operational costs by beefing up their security, would that make a difference, or is it just completely out of their hands?
In a world where five fingers were equal, security would not be the responsibility of businesses, talk less of small businesses. But what we have seen is that, and this is part of the challenge, and remember you asked me about ease of doing business, because the security architecture in the country has failed, okay? Businesses who are corporate entities have had to look to alternative sources, meaning they've had to self-protect. So for example, or let me just quickly reference, there are countries that you go to, you don't see security personnel everywhere. And as they would say, why do you have police carrying assault weapons on the road? Now bring it down to your business. What it means is that, first of all, first level security, you have to, if you can afford it, employ a security company to guard your property and your personnel. That's one. Two, depending on the location of your operation, you have to maybe invest or expense looking for, what do you call them again? What are these CCTVs, right?
Okay.
Or you may, if you're in a place where it's communal, maybe a market section, like what market people do, you have to pay levies to be able to employ additional vigilante or even additional policing just to be able to protect your goods and your assets. Okay. So imagine those who, like, I mean, I've had many colleagues who operate as farmers, and they operate in those areas where bandits and insurgents were. Some of them had to be paying extra levies just to keep the bandits away from them. Some of them actually packed up simply because the bandits increased the amount of levies, security levies that they had to pay. So that's an extreme scenario. But even in the local scenario, for example, some businesses maybe that had to transport their staff via the road. In this instance, they had to transport via airlines, and they had to pay the increased aviation costs simply because they were not ready to pay the insurance that comes with if you travel by road and you get kidnapped, right? Long ago, when I used to deal in seafood, I remember the last time we ever transported seafood overnight because my staff and the goods were attacked by armed robbers in the nighttime. But you see, for businesses who need to operate 24/7, you actually need to operate across the night in some instances, depending on what business that you deal with. So I, as a seafood operator, cannot move goods. The transporters cannot move at night. You can see how this dents business in the long run, how it causes the delays. And at the end of the day, it increases the price of what you need to sell because you need to make up for the man hours lost.
All right.
Wow.
Man, that's very, very eye-opening, if I can put it that way. All right, DEVOE. Now let's move to the next option that I on the list.
Option B.
Yeah, which is multiple taxation. Now, is there a solution to that? Should SMEs invest more money in lobbying to make their case to the National Assembly when bills are passed?
Of course, because they're directly affected. You know that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you know that SMEs, one of the key issues that they face is the multiple taxations, both from the federal government as well as the state government, and in some odd cases, the local governments, the levies and the tariffs that come about. I mean, you start hearing stuff like radio license, TV license, advertising license to even brand your cars, especially when you need to be seen and you need to create some publicity. I mean, come on, I sell pure water or I sell eggs, and I want people to know that I sell eggs. So I put a logo or a sticker, some sort of advert on my bus or on my car. And then one, for the lack of a better word, one uniformed or ununiformed individual comes to stop me to tell me that I have to pay a certain levy because to operate in that local government, that is what has been legislated. So you see, if it was just one levy, it wouldn't be a problem. I have some friends who operate a jetty. At last year, they said they literally shut down. And I was like, why? You have a beautiful opportunity here. I mean, you're in a very strategic location on the island. You should be able to create some kind of ocean economy for yourselves. And they were like, you do not know how much. They have 5 agencies of government on their necks every month, 2 from the federal government, 3 from the states, always asking, pay up, pay up, pay up, pay up.
Every month.
Every month. And this is a business that is just trying to survive. I was in shock. Now, whilst each agency does not want to hear your position, they literally take it that, first of all, if you're trying to acquire equipment to expand, oh, you must have money. Give us a bit of it, right? Now, the solution here is this. This is why you asked me a question, should they participate? Of course they should. They should be front and center when at the National Assembly and also the state assemblies, when they're having their what they call open forums or their stakeholder meetings to be able to decide what should go into these legislations. For example, in the Finance Act of last year, and I think this year they adopted it as well, any business or any SME who makes less than I think it was 25 million gross per annum, you won't have to pay corporate income tax. Okay? Which is a good thing. So what they're trying to do is to, one, encourage SMEs and startups to actually come into the tax brackets. Now, what they're also saying is that they will not step on you if you're barely surviving. It's a very good bill, okay? Now, at least it gives you some breathing space for as long until you grow beyond that position. The problem is sometimes people take advantage of it and continue declaring less than 25 million for almost 10 years. And I'm just talking about those who do that know what they do, right? But the truth is that position, that policy on behalf of government is in the interest of SMEs.
All right, now we've only got a couple of minutes. I wanted to touch on, like we said, we wanted to take it step by step, but very quickly, let's just touch on the power supply, and then I'll ask you for the outlook for 2023 in general. So power supply, do you think the answer for the inefficiency, for whatever word you want to call it,
so many words,
do you think the answer is for the SMEs to invest in renewable energy or just get off the grid?
Currently, the grid is the cheapest form of power for any business, even though the tariffs were just, I want to use a big word here, superditiously or Nicodemus-like increased. They came by night and increased.
For the millionth time?
Goodness.
Yes, because I remember 10,000 before used to get you 175 units. The last time we bought 10,000 naira bought us 135. That's a big cut, okay?
Oh, yes.
Now, on the flip side, we do understand that tariffs have to increase because they've been subsidized for such a long time. What essentially businesses would survive properly in is if there's some kind of projected plan by government so that they know that, okay, which was what the multi-year tariff was all about. Multi-year tariff order, but on a yearly basis, the tariff would increase. Now, what this does is that we can plan against that. We can also put it into our pricing in terms of goods and services, okay? Now remember, and it's not as if the grid power is reliable. So where you don't have reliable power, depending on what your pocket or your business budget can afford, either you can afford a big generator, which you have to buy diesel. And I know those who have suffered because of the high diesel prices, or you, on the lower end, you buy I better pass my neighbor, and you chug it out until there's no lights. So alternative sources, currently at the moment, renewable energy is still expensive from an acquisition point of view. And remember, we're talking about SMEs. Many of them don't have that bulk capital to be able to acquire.
All right, DEVOE, we've really actually come to the end, but very quickly, very quickly, putting all that we've talked about together, what is your outlook for SMEs in the year 2023?
Well, like I mentioned before, SMEs need to tread carefully in 2023. One of the biggest problems they also face is competence. If it's possible and they're able to train their staff or acquire people, because if you notice in this season, there are lots of the unemployment has risen. And it's risen also because within the past 3 years, many people have been fired or laid off because of the harsh economic. So what it means is that you also have the opportunity of hiring competent people, maybe at a lower price or a lower cost. And what that means is that you need to be able to either, if you can, diversify, or you can improve your service delivery so that you can compete favorably. Because when, when you're going through harsh times, the number one rule to have is to remain competitive. You might not have control of all these factors like FX, inflation, taxes, insecurity, power, but you do have control over your service delivery. And that's an opportunity for SMEs to differentiate themselves so that in the long run, their customers, no matter how much they price their service or their goods, can continue coming back, and they keep coming back. Rule of thumb, what you like, you continue buying. And if you really love it, you squeeze yourself, or you go the extra mile just to get it. And this is what will keep many of the SMEs alive as we go into 2023. Hopefully, we don't like to bank on hope, because that's not business. Nigeria will not have it worse with the election. The three top candidates kind of have an idea of how to manage economy. So I think my outlook for 2023 is going to be moderate and cautiously optimistic.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, DEVOE. At least it ended on a positive note there. And once again, we've come to the end of Business Hub. But thank you so much, DEVOE OKORIE, for joining us today, and of course speaking about this particular topic. I'm sure SMEs are, looking forward to a great 2023.
All right, and that is that. Coming up, we've still got some great music for you, and we will have Total Football at 7 o'clock. DEVOE, it has been absolutely fantastic having you on Business Hub, and